It's trapped in 8 states from Alabama to Arizona. Is the owner of Dunlap boards. Please help me welcome Mr. Jeff Dunlap.
We'll start over. What we're going to talk about is getting our DP set up correctly, because it really makes a difference when you're setting DP. It doesn't matter what kind you're using. It takes a certain amount of pressure to pull this or push it down, whatever one you're using. I have used all the DP. They all catch coons. And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that there's a better one or a worse one, because there's guys in the crowd and gals in the crowd that they caught coon in all of them. And we all know they work. I prefer, for the last few years, I like using the Dukes. That's what I started with. And the thing is that's what we kind of gravitate whenever we had success with. So that's why I use the Duke. Last year I started using the Freedom brand 2s, and I'm going to start using them. So I really like those. They set real fine trigger, like I'll show you how to do with the Dukes. What I like to do to start with, when I get the Dukes, when they're brand new, it's not as big a deal. But what you want is to file the dog and the trigger down. I take a flat file, especially if they're older, because what you want is you want the two pieces of clean metal going against each other, because it'll slide better. So whether they're pushing it up or using a push-pull to push down or pull, you want the two clean pieces of metal sliding against each other rather than rust or dye or anything else, because that'll make it more resistant. Because you want it just real easy to pull up for them. So what I'll do, a lot of times with the Dukes, when you get them, they'll have a little burr on the end. Not as quite as bad as like their 1.5s are, but they still have on some. So I just take a flat file, take it down to bare metal, like so. Then you get a small file, and right in here, right in the groove, you just kind of get that down to bare metal too. So what we got is we got two pieces of bare metal going against each other. The next thing I do is I use our whole purpose is to get this working as easily as possible. I got the silicone spray. You get it from like Bass Pro, Cabela's probably. It's not WD-40. It's not any of that really smelly stuff. This is like the food grade. Use on like big grinders and stuff for like doing when you do deer meat. You just take it, spray it. I'll take a spray. I spray the spring, and I spray on the dog or the trigger, because what you got is you got that pendulum there. And sometimes with like the Dukes, what will happen is that pendulum will get so gumped up with stuff, the whole pendulum, this part here, will move. That's not what you want. You want this to be free flowing. And the easier that this goes, the easier that coon can set that trap on. So you just spray that like that, and it's already going better. But I'll use the setter. If you got real, if you're a young guy, you haven't got all your strength yet, or an older fella, or been swinging hammers for 30 years, they've got different setters you can get, and it helps you set the DPs. What I like to do on mine is take it right to the edge. If you got it on full cock, a lot of guys will tell you want to have it on full cock because otherwise you'll get toe catching. But after I get done telling you this, you'll understand that's not true. This has nothing to do with whether you have this full cock or hair trigger, that coon's foot is still fully committed as far either way down into that trap. So I like to have mine, I know you can't see where you're sitting, but it's right on the edge. A lot of times I'll go and even mess with them at home in the summertime and get them, right where I want them to be. Because you want that just like hair trigger, but not so much of a hair trigger that when you're walking away it's firing on you. So as you get to use them more, you'll understand, what it is. What I like to use for on the trigger, marshmallows, a lot of times I'll take and bust them in half. If you're going to use a full marshmallow, what you want to do is make sure you get it pushed down in there. But I'll bust the half in half and push it down on that trigger, like so. This Because what you don't want is you don't, whether you use orange slices, whatever you're going to use on that, if you put it on the trigger, you don't want it to rub on the outside of the trap. Because what that's going to do is create friction. Everything else with the filing, the dog and the trigger down, spraying silicone on there, we're making our trap fire easier. So if you got your marshmallow dragging on the outside of that trap, and it's not that you can't catch no coon like that, but we're trying to catch every single coon that puts his paw down in here. So just make sure you push that marshmallow all the way down on. Got any questions so far? Anybody gets any questions, just let me know and we'll stop. There's two different setups I use. And I make all my own cable extensions. That's something you can do. Make your own cable extensions and all that. It saves a few dollars, and it all adds up. What I'll do is, I usually don't have them this long. I'm going to use it for something else. But when I make them, the two different ways I hook them is I'll go and I'll have one end large like this, and the one smaller. And when you're making them, you want to test a couple and kind of get an eye for it. But what I'll do is I'll go and I'll put this through the end of the chain, run it through here. You got it like that. And all you're going to do is you're going to take your DP, go around the tree or whatever you're going to hook to, and you're hooked on. That's one of the fastest ways to hook up your DPs. You want to have them cabled off. Sometimes what happens is a lot of times the guys will think that the coon's pulled out. If you got a toe catch or something, they might, but you got a good catch on there, not gonna pull up. What happens is when you go on, hook onto like a tree, and I have this happen 3-4 times a year, but I just have it as acceptable loss because this is the easiest way for me to do it. But what happens is they get wrapped around the tree, and then they're pulling out against it and they're pulling that spring down, and you don't have to push this down very far to get their foot out. So, that's one of the bad things on doing it this way. But but like I say, it's fast enough. If you're setting a lot of DPs, it's worth taking an acceptable loss on it. The other way I do it is put a disposable stake on. I usually put probably about 16 inches, something like that, 16, 18 inches. But when you drive it to the ground, you drive it down. A lot of guys will just drive it down and put their DP or whatever they're using. Make sure you pull that sideways, because a lot of times if that doesn't take, then what you got is nothing. You don't have the trap, you don't have the coon, you don't have nothing. So make sure you set that. Got any questions? Yeah. Yep. What you can use, what I use for bait, I use my own bait. There's a lot of good baits on the market. I use my smoky fish. That's traditionally what I use, but like I said, there's a lot. But whatever you're going to use for bait, what I like to do is do the marshmallow like I showed you, put it right on the trigger. Take whatever you're going to use for bait, cat food, dog food, whatever. Put like maybe a tablespoon on top of it. Get some kind of sauce. Get some fish oil, something like that. What I don't recommend is a lot of guys, I see it on the internet, guys are using peanut butter, and who like peanut butter? The DPs don't like peanut butter, and they don't like bacon. When I first started using DPs a long time ago, I tried the bacon thing, and I couldn't even run my motor because my gloves were greasy, my hands were greasy, and it just gets over everything. So whether you're gonna make your own or not, just I personally don't like putting peanut butter or oil selling in these. It's good to squirt around. You can take bacon grease and squirt it in a tree. They're going to come up there and lick on it. But The other thing I like to use in certain areas where I want to get them off the road is I'll use a drag. You can use the Wolfgang ones, these work real good. The coon ain't going far with them. The other, you can use smaller, like what works good is like the old box drags. A lot of times you pick them up real cheap. You hook them onto your DPs. What they got here is you get to use the Wolf, like Freedom brand ones. You can get it and hook them right into them. You know, so you got to, if you find you got to weld them yourself. I duct tape some of mine and they work just fine with that grizzly tape. But you know, like if you're trapping along, if you can road trap and stuff, that's not a good way to go. You want them right there. I do a lot of road trapping up in either Michigan or Louisiana. And what I'll use is the microphone don't like me, and I don't like it. What you want to get is some grounding rods. And grounding rods are pain, but they're good for, with the DPs, for if you got like thieves in your area, stuff like that. Probably not a lot of thieves are going to be out there this year, you know, stealing goon like last year. But the trap is still, you know, $10 trap. So all you got to do is hook your DP to your grounding rig. You take it and stick it in the ground, way out in the water, bring it down, stick your T-bar through it, and you're all set up. Just put your DP on there and, you know, out of sight, out of mind. The other thing you can do is you can run these into culverts. Like if you have your culvert right here, take a T-bar, run this into the culvert, put your T-bar down, you'll have this up here. You have your trap plate set on the bank here, and it'll run that coon under that road, and nobody's the wiser. Nobody will see it, you know, because you can take leaves, put up right on your DP, and they're not looking for leaves, they're looking for traps. You know, so it's one way to keep the thieving people from finding your stuff. When you go with the drivers, regardless of whether you use Wolfgangs or you're using Berkshires or any of them, go with a good driver. The thing is, if you get one like this one, if you just have the nut on there, if you're going out setting 12 traps or you're setting 100 traps, it's a lot more enjoyable. You got a handle to push it down. Then sit there all day long, you got that nut right in the palm of your hand, trying to push it down, or you got to carry a, you know, an 8 to 10 pound hammer with you to beat them down on the ground with. And if you're usually if you're DP trapping along the creeks or soft ground, yeah, this is all you need. But you know, just spend a little extra money, get a good one. I mean, they last. I use this one for beaver. It's longer than what you want for DP trapping. You know, if you had one, you know, about yay long, that's perfect size. Just something you can kind of walk with. But just, you know, like I say, spend a little extra money and get that. But when I'm setting the DPs up, so we got how to get them all fine-tuned, get them working properly, get them fired as easy as possible. But what we want to do is set up location. For just the guys that are, you know, starting out, maybe never even bought a coon before, what you want to do is set one right along the edge of the water. You'll see the coon tracks there. If there's a coon trail, you want to set right in the coon trail. Well, a lot of times what it'll be is you'll want to set off at the coon trail. The coon are single-minded. They're going from someplace and going to someplace on the coon trail. What you're going to do is stop them coon. So what you do is just wherever you're putting it, you stake your trap, got it in the ground. What you want to do is take some fish oil, shellfish oil, crawfish oil, bacon grease, whatever you want to use. Squirt it all around there. Make it look like smell like a smorgasbord there. Well, then what you want to do is you can use eggshells. When you get done eating eggs, just save them in a bag, sprinkle them around there. You can take feathers. A lot of times I'll get these boas, you know, and bust them up a little bit and just tie it if you're on private property. If you're trapping state land, you know, you want to get a darker one. But just tie it above your trap and, you know, squirt a little fish oil on there, and it'll keep dripping. It's got scent. It's up a little bit higher, you know, so it'll get that smell out there. draw something that might not be going down that trail. But a lot of times if you're doing partridge or duck hunt or something, if you can use them in your state, get the feathers and sprinkle them around your set there. Because what your main objective is to stop that coon. And usually I'll put, if I'm trapping spots that are just like setting locations, like you're going around a lake or a river, and like there's a sandbar there, I would set 2 traps there. Because it isn't like a massive amount with oak ridges up on top. I'll set 2 every place I stop. But if I'm setting like where cornfields are, where there's going to be a bigger bunch of coon, I'll set 4 traps. And then when I check them the next time, if it hasn't been a bad full moon to keep them from moving or other things, then I'll pull 2 and move 2. You want to keep rotating them because you'll burn out them areas. The cooners, there's still coon there, but there's such a smell there, they're going around them traps. They don't know exactly maybe what happened there, but they know something bad happened there. So a lot of times you can wait them out, like when it rains, it'll wash that water out, and what will happen is, it'll wash that water, wash that smell out, and then coon will start working on traps again a lot of times. And a lot other thing you can do is, if you got a lot of property, just pull the traps and move to the next spot, and you can come back later and catch some coon. You get some areas that doesn't bother, but other areas are really spooky about that. So, depending on your area. But these bullets work really good. So, you got any questions on any of that?
On a good coon trail, do you move that trap then?
Not if it's I would still, if it was like a farm, I would probably leave it there a couple checks, and then pull 2. But I'd set 4 and then pull 2 up. So I'm just trying to burn up as much ground as I can, but a lot of guys will be limited to the amount of spots that they can go. So if nothing else, you could pull up, like if you had a set here and that coon trail was running over there, you could pull them up here, 2 up here, and move them down further. You're getting out of that burn circle.
We trap a lot of culverts and ditches coming in the road. We very seldom ever move that trap after a catch until we're pulling.
Yeah.
You think moving 10, 12 feet away from where you caught one would help?
Yeah, it definitely will help. If you're getting a lot of rain and stuff, if you're trapping in the rain, it probably, when checking, it probably wouldn't be as big a deal, because that's washing out. But, I move them. I'm a firm believer in moving them because I don't think the coon are as stupid as people think. I think that they protect their lives too, So I just, like I say, just move them.
Which side broad is your Johnny plate?
I think when I bought them, he said that they were 1/8, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know. I just buy them. I'm not on coon. On coon, I never had a problem on them. I tried them on beaver and otter down in Louisiana, and I got some at home that looked like pretzels, but it works real good for coons. They're nice and light.
About how long is that? About 6 foot?
Yep, I'm 6 foot, so. But I like using the fiberglass ones, but a lot of times when I'm coon trapping, I don't need that 8. I only got 8 footers, so these smaller ones, work pretty good. A lot of times if you just get them out there in that cold water, they'll be all done. So, any other questions? Yep.
You make reference to a full moon. What's your thoughts on most moon cases?
I think that nothing really moves good during the full moon. Not saying you couldn't go out and slam them, but it's been my experience that, just animals don't move good in the full moon. A lot of times deer and everything, you'll see them laying down during the full moon. And I think that even during the full moon, and that's like, where it's clear skies, if it's full moon and it's cloudy and dark or raining, they'll move on them nights. But on them real bright nights, they just don't like it. When they, nothing's going to bother a 30-pound raccoon, and that's what we think of when we think of a coon getting attacked during so why would they be scared? But them animals learn stuff from when they're little bitty from their mothers, And it ain't no stuff will eat them in, and I think it just goes right up into when they're full-grown animals, you know. But yeah, the full moon, you just gotta work around it. And, yeah. But yeah, I always hate coon trapping during a full moon, but I hope that's the only time I ever hope it's raining. Yeah, what I'll do is, like this one's died. I dyed all mine, and then generally what I'll do is like the next fall, I'll go in that full metal jacket and dip my DPs in it, and it covers them. It's the quickest thing to use. A lot of guys, some guys love it, some guys hate it, but and that's all canine stuff. With a spoon, nobody even, you know, it won't. Nobody would say it ever bothered them. So, but like I say, I mean, it's fast, it's easy. Whatever you put on here, the first coon you catch, it's coming off. So, easy and simple is the best way for me. Because I love trapping, but I hate working on traps. So.
Do you have any white ones?
No. No, I don't use the white ones. I do a lot of road trapping, and it'll be real obvious, you know. But I guess it was always my thought with the white ones. Guys like them and they believe in them, and I think that. But then I am on the other side. I think it doesn't matter because of the fact of if white paint was, you could catch a coon with white paint. We could just paint a white spot on a tree instead of trap there. So you know, but it's just not my thing. And like I said, I road trap, but if somebody else wants to, as long as they're out trapping and having fun, that's all I care about. So.
Do you cover any of your traps with a cup or anything? Do you cover any of your traps with a styrofoam cup or a paper cup?
When I first started using DPs, I used a styrofoam cup, and I thought about that styrofoam out there and stuff, and I didn't want to do that. I got more stuff in here than I was goose trapping in a year. There we go. What I do is I make them caps. You can buy them from Z-Trap, and I know there's other guys selling them. I make my own. I got them about half my sets. All I do is, I had a piece of aluminum, and I cut these out myself, but you can buy the washers from like Lowe's or anything. And I know you can't see them good, but if you're interested, you can come up after and check them out. And then get a piece of dowel, you know, and just get the piece that fits right in there. Just cut them off, maybe about 2 inches, and just take a high screw, screw it in there, and I just put a piece of cable on there. And the other good thing is if you got weak hands or can't set them that good, you know, you can just, you know, preset everything at home, put your marshmallow, your bait, everything in there, cap it off, and your trap is all set. When you get out there, you know, it's real easy to set. So, you know, it's something you can make at home. It's easy to do, give you something to do, think about trapping during the summertime. And, I can't remember, I figured it up last year, I think I had like 30 cents a piece on them when you know, and I mean, that's better than $12 a dozen or whatever they charge for them, so.
You know as much refusal on the food to work with?
What was that?
You want as much refusal on the food to work with, for example?
No, because I got, you know, what I got is I got the fish oil or whatever sprayed down there, and then I got, you know, the feathers and to stop them. And then once I get them stopped, and you know, nice, you know, sometimes I'll start thinking that that's a problem, and I'll, you know, put a marshmallow on top of it or something. But I've had them without, and I've never had a problem. I've caught them where I didn't have a cap on, and caught them with the one with the cap, and I've caught them, you know, the other way too. So, but it really doesn't seem to be a problem. Because I mean, they're in the water finding crawfish under rocks and stuff. So if this is sitting there, you know, it's basically a garbage can, and you know how the coon are, they can get their way into a garbage can. Find that. Any other questions?
We started covering them with cup. We went to Sam's Club and bought paper cups. You
Yeah.
can still buy paper cups.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that styrofoam.
Yeah.
But when it's rainy, it just makes them work so much better.
Yeah. The paper cups will be good, you know, because they're biodegradable, so that would work good.
And the other thing with the cup is if you're running, you don't have to go directly to the trap. If the cup's still on top of the dog proof, you just keep moving.
Yeah.
If it's off, then you go check it.
You probably could find them wax covered paper cups someplace too.
And again, the styrofoam cups, I'm like you, I don't like them. Even though one growing season, after the coons chewed them up, you probably can't find them, but they don't look good the day after.
The landowners don't like it.
But the paper cups are, you have to do some looking for them.
Yeah.
Like I say, they'll break down in a year.
The question over there? The cat bar? It just keep, what it does is, it'll keep, like if you put bait down in there, you get a heavy. Like a washer. But that brings up a good point. The reason that you have a cat is it's for the rain. You put your bait down in there, the rain hits it, washes your stuff out. But another thing it'll do is it keeps the squirrels and the mice out. And the other thing is that even if you're not going to use the cast, if you fine tune them traps like I was showing you, and do everything I showed you, you'll catch them mice. And I know you say first thought, well, I don't want to catch the mice. But the thing is that they're going to keep robbing you and taking your bait if you don't kill them. So, you know, it's better to catch them, kill them, be done with them, then you can go on to what you want to catch. The other thing with the DPs, it works good. If you got real bad possums in your area, I don't know how they are out here, but they're getting horrendous where I trap. And the thing is, as trappers, we don't want to catch them, but you've got to kill a certain part of them because there's only so much food out there, and them possums will take over instead of the coon. So, but what you can do if you want to cut down on your possum, if you take a dowel, take a piece of dowel, just zip strip it on your stake, and you'll have it down about that far. And it'll be zip stripped from here all the way down. And you don't want to weld it on there because it'll be too much stake in the ground, and there won't be any action on their wrist. What you'll do is you go up like along the edge of the water, just take your DP and set it out there, and that water will be like underneath here. And it's just like mink trapping. When you're on mink trapping pocket set, you don't catch a lot of possums. And this is the same theory. So if you take that dowel, just put your trap out in the water a little bit, it'll cut down on that possum. And the coon will still go out there. So, you know, it's just one more idea to, you know, kind of eliminate some of the possums. After a while, you get sick of them things. Any question on any of that? The other thing I'll do, and you have to check in your area. It's you know, it's like any of the demos. You got to, you know, some of the stuff you got to check to see if it's legal in your area. But where I'm from, it's legal. What I'll do is I'll make up these pipes. I'll put some of them out before season, and generally I'll get whatever's cheap because you know, a coon will come in if you get them eating and feeding, they'll keep coming back. You can go into Farm and Fleet, get some busted fish food bags. They're usually cheap. They get busted bags. Go to the co-op. They might have some busted bags of some corn, fish food, anything dry. You know, dried molasses. You don't want to take like a liquid molasses dump in here because it's just going to go bloom right out. These gravity-fed feed ones, what you'll do is you can wire them to the trees, put them out, and you know they're pretty cheap to make. You know, you can get a lot of coon coming into them. They'll have trails coming in. A lot of times you're using it on private property, you can use the white. They sell the black tubing too, and that works. But the main thing is with these, you want to get something to clog up that end because you don't want your food in there getting wet. But I wired the trees, and you know, it works really good. Anything you can do ahead of time, you know, to make trapping easier. And now that coon prices aren't as high as what they were, you know, if you can go out here to one spot and catch, you know, 5, 6, 7 coon rather than go to, you know, a spot where you weren't pre-baiting, you only catch maybe 1 or 2, you know, and you got the same amount of gas going there. So, but if you do put these out, or you got the big electrical, you know, the big electrical feeders or your hunting clubs or whatever you're trapping at home, you don't want to come right up to this and set right on top of it. You'll kill this bait. What you want to do is just set off, where them coon are not associating them burn circles with this or your other, you know, your big electrical ones. because, you know, it'll go dead for a while. And that's what them guys run into down to Texas, that, you know, when they were start trapping them coon, they'd sit right up on the feeders, man. It would kill the feeders and they'd have to move back off. And it'll be probably the same thing where you're at. So just don't set on, if you use this, spend your money and your time doing it, don't set up on right on top of it. The other set, show you one more thing and I'll kind of wrap it up. Within your state, if you can use like conifers and stuff, what I like to do is I'll take my tiling spade, I'll dig a hole. You want your hole about like this big, but you know, where it'd be like the middle of that trap. Like in Michigan, if we got and you check on this in your state, look at your law, you should read your laws anyways, but if in Michigan, if it's a foothold, like hold them alive, we have to check every 24 hours. If it is a lethal set, we have a different check period. So if you have that in your state, that's a real benefit. So, you know, if you run your DPs on drowners, that makes it a lethal set. If you use conifers and they're dead in a hole, that's a lethal set. So some states it's like that, some states it's not. You have to check in your state. What I like to do is I'll take tiling spade, dig that hole, dig that trap, dig it back about that far. You want it back far enough in the bank, the hole, where they can't reach in. If they reach in, you're going to be getting, you know, foot catches and everything else. Now all you got to do is just put your bait you're using, put a little lure back in there, take your conifer, whether in your state, 160, 220, whatever is legal, you know, put it in that hole. Just take your, what I like to do, especially on trapping, like if there's boat traffic on the river, take T-bars and T-bar it, because if that coon gets out here and flipped over and the people are going down the river, what's going to happen is they're going to see that white belly. It's something they can see. You got that coon caught, his head's down in that trap in that hole, and just the black or brown is spacing out, but they probably ain't going to see it. So that's the purpose of the T-bar. And then all I do is just, you know, like I say, work some stuff around. I mean, that's a deadly set, but it's important to check on what you know, I'm sure most of you know what the laws are, but check on, you know, lethal versus non-lethal check period, because, you know, if you can legally check your traps every 2 days, you can run twice as many traps. So, you know, and it's worth setting this stuff up that way, if that's the case. But, I guess on the DP, you know, it's pretty much self-explanatory. You know, if you got any questions or anything, you can, you know, come down and ask me or stop by the booth or see me around. But I guess that's what we'll end up for today.
We found on our DPs we were having over the last couple years, we cover most of them with a cup. Something worked them, took the cup off, didn't get caught. We backed the sets up with leg holds and snares and discovered the bobcat.
Yeah. In Michigan, I had just a little trouble with it, but down in Louisiana, I'd come up there and everything's gone right down the marshmallow. And I'm thinking possums, I'm thinking everything. But one thing, if you got grays in your area, them grays can get their little noses right down, all the way down into that, right to the marshmallow, and they even can get their teeth into it a little bit. So if you got grays in your area, you know, and what was weird is I set the DP and they do that, but I set a trap there and they would, I mean, it was like they were spooked from that. It was underneath the bridges and stuff, and so I was blind setting the DPs. And I did all right doing that a couple times, but it's kind of weird you're using your DP as bait, you know, so for another trap. But that's something to think about, you know, if the bait's all stolen, it could be gray pots too, because they're real bait stealers. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate everybody coming, and hope you have a great time this weekend. I'm glad to see a lot of young guys here. And we need you guys to keep this going. Without you guys, we're all done. So I appreciate you young guys coming. I really do.